Hey everyone, so when I laid out my post the other week, I got a million questions about Reformed Egyptian.
Where is Reformed Egyptian?
This language never existed.
Where's the evidence?
You believe in a fantasy script.
Show me one ancient example.
Joseph made it up.
Do you even know linguistics?
Reformed Egyptian
all
is
of
not a
this is
thing.
fake.
Show me one.
Now, some of these were sincere, a lot of them were mocking, some were curious, but some were clearly just quick jabs. So because this question kept coming up, I want to take a moment and actually walk through what Reformed Egyptian means inside the context of the Restoration and how historical linguistics can help frame it. Hey everyone, my name is Jared Lambert. I'm a historical linguist, bringing you linguistic insights to help deepen your scripture study. And today I want to give you a historical linguistic perspective on Reformed Egyptian and Joseph Smith's translation style. So first, let's get something abundantly clear. Joseph never claimed that he was translating any of these texts by deciphering the characters on the original corpus. Most of his translation took place while Joseph wasn't even looking at the characters themselves. I mean, he would place interpreters or seer stones into his hat to block out the light so that he could see the revealed text before him. This is not a linguistic translation. This is a revelatory translation. So what is Joseph describing when he talks about this Reformed Egyptian? You see, Reformed Egyptian means a modified form of Egyptian characters, a localized adaptation, this scribal evolution. And that's exactly what we see in ancient Egypt. Egyptian writing was constantly reforming, hieroglyphic to hieratic, hieratic to demotic, demotic influencing Coptic. At every one of these stages, we see the script change. So from a historical linguistic perspective, if a Hebrew-Egyptian scribal group left Jerusalem around 600 BCE and wrote for centuries in isolation, then yes, of course, their script would naturally evolve too. And this is exactly how writing systems behave. So Joseph was spot on in describing his source material as a reformed Egyptian, given the information that we have now. So this brings us to our next point. We actually have evidence of over 100 modified Egyptian scripts across the Mediterranean and Near East. Exactly the same sort of this reformed Egyptian that Joseph is describing. We have Proto-Synactic, we have Hieratic shorthand, Demotic cursive, Meroitic in Nubia, Egyptian characters adapted to write Semitic languages. So when people ask, has anything like reformed Egyptian ever existed? Yes, hundreds of times over. Yes, we just don't know if we have the specific one that Joseph is describing. And here's why. What we don't have is the original corpus Joseph translated from. What we do have is a characters page that's 7 rows of symbols supposedly copied by Joseph, though that can't actually be fully verified. And the characters are somewhat vaguely Egyptian, somewhat Hebrew-ish, some shorthand, some almost look Mesoamerican. The honest truth is this: it's a really poor rendition. It does not match any known alphabet. It doesn't show consistent morpheme repetition. And so whatever it is, it's a really rough copy of the source. But then it's also not random either. There's repeating shapes, there's the spacing, there's these internal consistencies, and it definitely can be proven to be copied and not invented. So what does this prove? Really nothing. What does it disprove? Yeah, nothing also. See, what it shows is someone copying characters they clearly did not understand, which again is exactly what Joseph claimed. So since we cannot prove Joseph's Reformed Egyptian existed, and we can't reconstruct its grammar or match its corpus, what use do we have of it? Well, the concept Joseph described fits ancient scribal tradition perfectly. And I always point out that the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. So here is the biggest point. Critics often try to evaluate Joseph as if he were a failed linguist, but Joseph never claimed to be a linguist. And if we evaluate his scraps and fragments that have survived academically, of course it will look like a bad linguist, just like any farmer from the frontier America with no linguistic training would. He didn't claim to be translating this academically. He claimed to be receiving revelation. So instead of analyzing Joseph as if he failed a linguistics test, why don't we study what text we actually have? Because that is where things get really interesting. Because the text that he produced is linguistically phenomenal. The linguistic structures that they contained, he never could have studied. He never could have learned because they didn't exist yet. They were yet to be discovered. See, in my own research, including my work on the ancient naming patterns, you see construct change and semantic layering, divine council naming hierarchies, proto-Semitic relational titles, and all embedded in deity markers inside of their own names. It is impossible for someone at that time to be able to get these points. So let me try to summarize this in a very simple way. Reformed Egyptian is not a joke. It's not proof all by itself. But see, Joseph never claimed to decipher the characters. He claimed to translate by revelation. And when we examine the patterns Joseph produced, these patterns align with ancient Semitic, Egyptian, and Near Eastern linguistic logic, and the picture becomes so much more interesting when we just look at the text. These texts behave like ancient texts, nothing like we see at the time of Joseph ever recreated in such a way. And that alone deserves a deeper look. I always say, knowledge is never dangerous, but knowledge outside of context always is.